Alright, so to kick things off proper, you know I had to start off with Super Mario All-Stars, because I feel this release was a real treat that I wasn't expecting as a child. All three of the original Super Mario Bros. With the addition of the unreleased Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels, all fully remastered with beautiful 16-bit sprite work, along with a reworked MIDI soundtrack. Everything that you know and love is still present in these titles, from the warp pipes in the first game to the warp flutes in the third entry. At this point, you would figure everybody has had at least one chance to check this compilation out. But then again, as more and more generations pass, it's our duty to do our best in introducing these classic titles to the youth to get them up to speed on how things have gotten where they are now. And also, simply put, Mario games tend to be genuinely fun. Interestingly enough, the SNES Classic didn't include this game on its roster, and that was a bit of a shame. So nowadays, the easiest way to play this game would have to be on the Super Nintendo Online service, unless you find loose copies of the physical versions out in the wild. This should only set you back about $20 to $30, but definitely give this one a try if you come across it. Next up, Super Double Dragon is still to this day one of my favorite iterations of the series, with the arcade version of Double Dragon 2 coming in strong second. The quality of life enhancements alone are good enough reason to hop into this one with a buddy. The variety of moves that you can perform, including the basic input commands, are such a nice addition. It adds a different level of strategy not seen before in the series. Another great addition is the ability to block and counter enemies in the heat of battle. I find it much easier to stand your ground against the baddies you encounter once you get the hang of how the mechanics work. The combo system allows you to mix and match punches and kicks while you're in the grapple phase, and the game allows the flexibility of still being able to perform dive kicks and kick combos while you're holding a weapon. The challenge is definitely present, and I encourage you to play with a buddy if you plan on tackling this one, at least until you get accustomed to it. Next up, Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage is probably one of the most difficult beat-em-ups you'll ever play, but hear me out. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you'll fall in love with this one despite its harsh nature. As you play through it, you'll get detailed comic strips progressing the story, and you'll assume the role of both Spider-Man and Venom, each with their own unique combat styles. The controls are easy to learn, and the gameplay is rock solid and smooth. There is a hidden meter that charges a powerful attack that hits multiple enemies the more combo attacks you land, and this can really help you get out of a pinch when bombarded. You have the ability to pull enemies towards you with a web shot and either combo them or toss them directly behind you and potentially into other enemies. There's also a similar web shot that allows you to bind your enemies as well. And you can web swing and follow up with a flying kick to dispatch your foes too. By tapping forward twice and holding it, you can burst into a sprint and ram your enemies if you press the attack button right after as well. Knowing your combat move arsenal is essential in this game, but it is doable if you want it bad enough. This game can be brutal, but I do recommend it nonetheless. Next up, we have Donkey Kong Country. This masterpiece developed by Rare has gained legendary status as some of the best 2D platformers of its generation, and arguably of all time. The pre-rendered 3D graphics were unheard of at the time, and made it hard to believe that this game was even running on SNES hardware. Sure, there's compression that affects the fidelity of the visuals as a whole, but the end result is still impressive nonetheless. The mechanics are very responsive and as smooth as butter. The level design is masterful and fun, and the soundtrack is next level. David Wise really outdid himself throughout the entire series to the point that every track is a bop. There honestly isn't one that I don't like. The tag in tag out 2-player mechanic was something to marvel as well. The boss fights were fair, and the level of secrets within the game are vast and plentiful. And thankfully, you don't have to worry yourself with racing against the clock, as this game doesn't have a timer. Now, there are certain levels that will force you along, like say for instance the minecart levels, but that's expected. This game deserves a playthrough if you've never had the chance. Trust me on that one. Next up, we have Kirby Superstar. This game was also a bit of a compilation too, where you have 8 games in one, literally. Now, I won't cover them all, but I will highlight that there are fully fledged cave-style adventures that allow you to explore and collect nostalgic treasure, and there are fully remastered games of the past in there as well. This game is another great example of the pre-rendered 3D graphics in a 2D setting, and it looks incredible. The copy ability has some new features that allow you to absorb an enemy and its powers, then extract it as an AI partner that helps you out while you play. And the drop-in co-op is seamless once you create the AI partner, then as long as there's a second controller plugged in, that player can be controlled. There is also a reaction-based game called Samurai Kirby that is really fun to mess around with. It can be played solo against the AI or with a friend. I highly recommend this one. Next up, we have Mega Man X. This game was a huge step up from the original entries before it. With the new sprite work, music, and mechanics, this game was a dream to play through. Now don't get me wrong, this game is no walk in the park and it will kick you in the booty cheeks. Real hard. But when you get into its groove, it's like no other. Just like all the other Mega Man games, there's a particular order to beat the bosses in to make things a little easier for you with the series' well-known boss weakness system. This game is riddled with secrets and nostalgic goodies for you to find too, for both series veterans and Capcom fans alike. The soundtrack is fire and definitely my favorite in the series besides Mega Man 2 and 8. Give this one a shot for sure, you won't regret it. Up next, we have Star Fox. Revolutionary technology and 16-bit gaming, all possible through the FX chip, was utilized in this release. In my childhood years, my mind was blown at what I was seeing and playing. If someone would have told me that a game with 3D polygons was running on a SNES before I heard of this game, I would have laughed in disbelief. And wouldn't you know it, this game really took me by surprise back in 1993. Of course, coming back into this game in 2022 was a bit of an adjustment as the frame rate is low, especially in comparison to the superior Star Fox 64, but after gaining my bearings, I was once again hopping into the fray with the Star Fox team battling the evil Andross, and it was like I was a kid again, fully immersed into the Lilat system. The multiple paths and secrets you could take added for a good amount of replayability, and they kept it fresh with the view perspectives throughout the levels as you progress through them. I only recommend this one if you wish to see where the franchise started and want to experience it for the first time, or if you're familiar with the game and want to take that nostalgic trip back to 1993. Moving along, we have Super Mario Kart coming strong, powered by that Mode 7 technology within the Super Nintendo. I played a good bit of this game with a close friend of mine back in the day, and to be honest, it was mostly battle mode. Racing was fun, but that battle mode was where it was at. It's funny looking back on it, and even playing it realizing the walls were flat, but we understood what Nintendo was going for, and it never stopped us from having a good time. I got to know these courses like the back of my hand, and to this day, I'll never forget the shortcut on Ghost Valley 1 that you have to access with the feather power-up. It's so convenient. Even though this title was limited to 2 players only, there's still so much fun to be had with this one. Check it out and see how it all started if you haven't already. Next, we have Super Mario RPG, my favorite RPG of all time still to this day. It was also my first time hopping into the genre as well. Squaresoft did an outstanding job conveying a unique yet traditional RPG set in the Mario universe, introducing some very interesting characters that join you along the way, and that are pivotal to the story overall. I really like the fact that each character in your party is relatable and develops so well throughout the journey. And I especially like how you can befriend characters that you wouldn't think would ever join forces with Mario per the long-standing history that they share in the universe. The special abilities that each character learns is within reason, and the weapons that you acquire are cool to see in action when battling. And speaking of the battling system, it's very engaging and keeps you on your toes. I can't recommend this one enough. Next up, we have Super Metroid, aka Metroid 3. Another amazingly well done version in the series where the visuals are updated and the soundtrack is atmospheric and invigorating. These games are known to force heavy exploration and make you keep your wits about you. An important thing to note when it comes to the games in this series is that not all enemies need to be dispatched, as there isn't a leveling system for 1, and 2, they all respawn upon leaving and entering the room. But I just can't help myself sometimes because the game feels so good to play that you don't mind taking out the enemies in your path. There's no feeling quite like finally finding that special ability that will allow you to traverse the area that you couldn't get to near the beginning and middle of the game. If you're a new school gamer and have played Metroid Dread, I still recommend this one as it holds up even to this day. Up next, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Again, stepping things up visually, as well as in the audio department, this game world is vast and rich with puzzles and treasure. The item management screen is a very welcome addition, and with the extra buttons the SNES controller has, it allows for more functionality with new mechanics like dashing, attacking, items, lifting, and pulling up your map as needed. This world is open and full of secrets and dungeons for you to explore. And yes, there are side quests for you as well, all within reason thankfully. Boss fights will keep you on your toes, and NPCs have plenty of lore and valuable information to bestow upon you. As in most Zelda games, the only form of upgrades you'll see is via your gear and weapons. This game is a must play, especially if you're a Zelda fan. And moving along, we have Super Mario World, an absolute banger of a Mario game with a huge world map to explore and a hefty amount of levels to traverse. This one will keep you busy for a bit, and even has some challenging bonus areas that you can unlock for those seeking the ultimate challenge. That, and for the completionists. Whatever your reason for reaching that area, it's no joke when it comes down to the difficulty. The power-ups are pretty much the same, with the exception of the feather, which gives you the cape for flight. Similar to the leaf in Super Mario Bros. 3, you can fly over the whole stage if you wanted to. The only difference is that you can truly continuously fly if you master the mechanic, whereas the Tanuki suit had limits where you would have to descend. Plus, this game was the first time you could actually ride Yoshi. I mean, come on, it's a win-win in my book. Next up, we have Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. I remember getting this game within the first week it launched, and I couldn't find a single store that had it in stock between Toys R Us and the like. Then I randomly got lucky and found it at a Sears that was quite a bit of a distance from where we lived back then. Anyway, this game had a very unique and wonderful art style, again, making one question how it was running on 16-bit hardware and still able to operate so smoothly. The mechanics were significantly different from the first Super Mario World, where Mario and Luigi are infants in this story, and it's up to the Yoshis to protect them from Kamek Koopa's goons, along with Bowser Jr. of course. Being able to morph into vehicles to reach new areas was nice, and making and launching eggs as a weapon was a unique change, and it was a welcome addition, an awesome new mechanic. Definitely play this one if you haven't. Switching over to Sega Genesis, we have Mega Bomberman. First of all, I can't say anything about this game until I mention how fire the soundtrack is. I mean, all the way throughout this game is thumping. It's one of those instances where the Yamaha sound chip was used to its full potential, and it's glorious. With that out of the way, this definitely is my first and favorite Bomberman in the series based off of the content and soundtrack alone. You have Louis all with unique abilities based on the color that they are, green being the fastest and blue being able to kick bombs over obstacles, just to name a couple. You've got your power-ups that the series veterans have come to know and love. The boss fights are intuitive and a blast to play. And of course the reason most people come to play a Bomberman game, the battle mode, which has a vast assortment of characters to pick from as far as appearance, and a completely separate set of arenas to choose from. Don't overlook this one. And continuing on, we have of course Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Let's face it, if you've owned a Sega Genesis, chances are you've had this game. Don't lie. This title enhanced, refined, and perfected the original formula by a long shot. Adding tighter controls, the new spin dash to gain speed and momentum quickly, and making the special stages more accessible and easier to deal with makes this game my go-to when I need my classic Sonic fix. This is also yet again another awesome showcase of what the Yamaha sound chip was capable of. The addition of two-player split screen was a surprise, and the ability to play the game as Knuckles with the lock-on cartridge was a nice treat as well. Now, this game does get incredibly difficult towards the end, but it's totally worth it once you best Dr. Robotnik in the finale. And to be 100% honest with you, I've only ever finished the game with save states when I played it on Sega Genesis Collection on Switch, so, keep that in mind. And now we have Streets of Rage, the game that helped set the standard for beat-em-ups that released in the later years. Tight gameplay with awesome maneuvers and an awesome soundtrack done by the masterful and legendary Yuzo Koshiro. This game, along with its sequels, also made an excellent use of the sound chip and blew other titles out of the water in comparison. The 90s inspired music really meshed well with the visuals and atmosphere, and when you heard it, you couldn't help but dance a little bit. Playing simultaneously with a friend was the best way to experience the game, but it was fair enough to where you could finish it alone. My first time playing this game was magical, in a way that I've never felt with Double Dragon. I suggest playing the first two games in the series for sure, but SOR 3 isn't bad either. Most say that SOR 2 is the best, but there's something about the original that keeps calling me back. Check it out for sure. And moving along, we have Virtua Fighter 2. I still to this day don't know why Sega decided to make this Genesis version, but I'm glad they did. For a while, I wasn't able to afford a Sega Saturn, and this was my alternative to play Virtua Fighter 2. Now, I know it's missing two characters from the roster, Leon and Sean D, and I know some of the songs and levels were missing and others recycled to make up for that, but I appreciate how they kept the core mechanics of the fighting system intact for the 2D iteration. Virtua Fighter is still hands down my favorite 3D fighting series of all time, and I'm glad to have been able to experience it in some form or fashion before getting my Saturn so many years ago. Every character feels pretty much as they do in the Saturn release, and the inputs work just as well. One character who has always been a challenge to master is Akira. Even to this day, I still haven't quite got him down to a science, but I respect it. Play this one for fun, or to get acclimated with the series. Otherwise, play the remastered arcade version on the Xbox Marketplace while it's still available. It's currently $4.99. Moving on to the PlayStation, we have Crash Bandicoot 2. This was my first game on PS1 by the time I finally got mine. This game kicked my butt, and not having a memory card conditioned me to become an absolute beast at it too. I know this game like the back of my hand and still play it over and over from time to time. Since I hadn't been able to get an N64 back then, this was my alternative. Even though all I could think about was Super Mario 64 and how fresh it was. I still love this game to death just as much as I did back then. Nothing has changed. My memories aren't as fond of the first Crash, as I consider that one to be the Gauntlet. It had a certain level of stiffness that was later corrected in this iteration, which I'm happy about. Crash 2 improved upon the formula greatly when it came to the controls and mechanics. The level design was top notch, and the death animations kept you entertained. This game is always worth a playthrough. Continuing on, we have Bloody Roar. This 3D fighting series opened my eyes to an all-new style with the ability to morph into anthropomorphic beasts on the fly and tear each other apart. I remember renting this game along with Twisted Metal 2 with a buddy of mine, and we played them all night until the sun came up. We couldn't get enough of this game. The martial arts moves were a joy to look at in motion, and the combat system was deep with two completely different movesets, both within human form and when in beast form, both accessible once transformed. All characters had input commands and super moves called beast drives that were also input command based. I also appreciate how they adopted the breakable walls from fighting vipers. The soundtrack was a very catchy form of rock that had my feet tapping the floor, and the character roster was unique and fun to play around with. Finding your main in that game was difficult because each character brought their own level of intricacy and coolness. I would really love to see this series make a comeback, but until then, there's always the original. Check it out. And last but not least, Bloody Roar 2. This game took everything great about the first game and amplified it beyond transcendence. Once you master this game, it becomes muscle memory. The game plays you. I know it sounds crazy, but you have to experience it for yourself. Everything is refined in this one. Controls, movement, input, the combo system, the two movesets, the textures and art direction, and the music is even more intense. And as stated prior, I really would like to see the series come back to the days of the first three in the series, preferably this one. It would have been nice to have all the characters from the first game still be present in this version along with the new additions, but it's still a very acceptable roster nonetheless. I can't recommend this one enough. Alright, and with that, I'm gonna leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. It's a little passion project of mine I had on the back burner. Glad I was able to finally do it. And like I said, the next few iterations of these type videos will be a lot shorter. Trying to condense it down to a top 5, top 10 if I have to. It's just, I've played so many games in my time. I made myself sound old. In my time. But anyway, I've played so many games, and it's just really hard to kind of choose, like pick and choose when it comes to these kind of lists. So hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you saw, definitely like, comment, subscribe. Remember to keep it locked to Snoley Games for all of your indie game, third-party game, tech review coverage, and sometimes Nintendo and retro games thrown in the mix. Alright, have a good one. Take care.